Scout stood at the edge of the massive circular chamber, his antenna twitching with barely contained frustration. The Galactic Council's Grand Hall, with its towering crystal walls and floating light orbs, was designed to impress. Today, like every other day, it only served to remind him how much the other species looked down on the swarm. And how do we expect to take the runners seriously? The blue-skinned council leader waved his hand dismissively. Their entire species thinks like insects. No individual thoughts, no personal dreams, just endless copying of each other's actions. Laughter echoed through the chamber. Scout's outer shell darkened slightly, the equivalent of a human blush. He kept his position, standing perfectly still as the council members continued their daily mockery of his people. The runners weren't just any insect-like species. They had built starships that could cross galaxies. They had created medicines that could cure diseases other species hadn't even understood yet. Their giant hive cities were marvels of engineering that could house millions in perfect harmony. But none of that mattered to the council. Look at their ambassador, a cat-like council member purred, her tail swishing in amusement. Standing there, probably waiting for orders from the hive. Do you even have your own thoughts, little runner? Scout's back legs tightened, ready to leap, but he held himself back. As ambassador of the Swarm Alliance, he represented not just the runners, but also the workers, builders, and all other hive species that had joined together. They were stronger together, even if the council saw that as just another weakness. The Swarm Alliance requests permission to expand our trading routes through Sector 7, Scout said, keeping his voice steady. The universal translator turned his clicking sounds into words the others could understand. Our ships have mapped safe passages that would benefit all species. Ah yes, your ships. The council leader smiled, but his eyes were cold. Tell me, what happens when your pilots need to make a quick decision? Do they need to check with the entire hive first? That must make space travel quite slow. More laughter filled the chamber. Scout's antenna picked up the various pitches of mockery. High-pitched squeals from the bird-like species, low rumbles from the rock creatures, and everything in between. Our pilots are fully capable of. Scout began, but was cut off. We've seen how your kind handles unexpected situations. A tall, tree-like being interrupted. When that meteor storm hit the Centauri sector last cycle, your ships just froze. No individual initiative. They all tried to follow each other's lead, and we lost an entire trading fleet. Scout's legs trembled slightly. That disaster had cost the swarm dearly, not just in lives lost, but in reputation. What the council didn't understand was that the ships had tried to protect each other. They had moved as one, trying to shield the weakest vessels. Yes, they had failed, but their instinct had been to save as many as possible. The motion to expand swarm trading routes is denied, the council leader announced. We cannot risk the safety of our shipping lanes on species that can't think for themselves. This meeting is adjourned. As the chamber began to empty, Scout remained in his spot. His mind connected briefly with the hive network, sharing the day's failure with his people. Waves of support and understanding flowed back to him, along with something else: determination. The Swarm Alliance was growing tired of being treated as lesser beings. They had joined the Galactic Council, hoping to find unity among the stars. Instead, they found only prejudice and mockery. As Scout finally turned to leave, his compound eyes caught a flashing alert from his ship's eye. Something had been detected at the edge of known space. A new species, showing signs of both individual action and collective coordination. Early scans suggested they called themselves humans. For the first time in many cycles, Scout felt something new stir within him. Not just the collective hope of his people, but his own personal spark of curiosity. Perhaps there was another way. A path that combined the strength of unity with the power of individual thought. The council's laughter still echoed in his memory, but now it felt hollow. They had no idea what was coming. Sometimes, those they mocked the most would turn out to be the strongest allies of all. Scout walked out of the chamber with his head held high. the real story was just beginning. Scout's ship hummed softly as it raced through the darkness of space. 3 Council patrol ships followed close behind, their weapons charged. He hadn't meant to enter this restricted sector, but after another failed meeting, the patrol ships had accidentally forced his route this way. "Surrender your vessel for inspection." The Council patrol leader's voice crackled through the communication system. "You have entered a restricted zone." Scout knew better. This was just another excuse to harass a swarm ship. His antenna twitched as he guided the organic-mechanical hybrid vessel through a field of asteroids. The Council ships, with their rigid mechanical designs, would have a harder time following. That's when his ship's sensors picked up something unexpected. "New planetary system detected," the ship's biological computer announced. "Third planet shows signs of advanced civilization." Scout's compound eyes focused on the readings. The planet was beautiful: blue oceans, green and brown landmasses, swirling white clouds. But it was the activity around it that caught his attention. Thousands of satellites orbited the world, along with space stations and small vessels. Analyzing population patterns, the computer continued. "Species shows unique behavioral characteristics. Warning: Council patrol ships still in pursuit." Scout had to make a quick decision. The Council hadn't found this planet yet. Their ships were too busy patrolling known space to explore these empty sectors. He dove closer, using the planet's moon for cover. The computer kept reporting its findings. Population demonstrates both individual and collective behaviors. They move in synchronized patterns during daily activities, but show independent decision-making capabilities. Scout watched through his ship's sensors as the scene unfolded below. In one city, millions of humans moved through streets in complex but organized patterns. Their vehicles flowed like rivers, each driver making individual choices that somehow worked together. In another place, thousands gathered for something called a sports event, moving as one while cheering for their chosen teams. "Remarkable," Scout clicked to himself. "They're like us, but also different." He saw their internet, a vast network of individual thoughts and ideas, sharing and building upon each other. It was like a hive mind, but voluntary. Each human chose to connect, to share, to work together. The Council patrol ships were getting closer. Scout needed to leave, but he couldn't look away from the readings. He saw human military units moving with perfect coordination while each soldier thought independently. He watched their social media, where billions of separate minds created massive trends and movements, acting like a superorganism without losing their individuality. "This is your final warning," the patrol leader's voice boomed. "Prepare to be boarded." Scout finally pulled his ship away from Earth, but not before his computer had gathered enough data to understand this remarkable species. As he prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed, his mind raced with possibilities. The Council thought the swarm was primitive because they worked together as one. They mocked the workers and runners for their collective actions. But these humans, they had found a balance the Council couldn't even imagine. Scout's ship shot into FTL speed just as the patrol ships fired their weapons. The shots missed, disappearing into empty space. His organic ship's advanced technology, another thing the Council looked down on, had saved him once again. As he traveled back to swarm space, Scout connected to the Hive network. He shared what he had seen, sending images of human cities, their military, their internet, their crowds. The collective consciousness of the swarm buzzed with excitement. "We are not alone." Scout thought into the network. These humans, they could be the missing piece we need. The swarm had always been proud of their unity, their ability to work together. But maybe they had focused too much on the collective, forgetting the power of individual action. The humans seemed to have mastered both. Scout made his decision. He would find a way to contact these humans. The Council's laughter still rang in his memory, but now it felt like motivation rather than mockery. They had called the swarm primitive, unchanging, stuck in their ways. Soon, they would learn how wrong they were. With humans as allies, the swarm could become something entirely new. a perfect blend of unity and individuality. Scout's antenna quivered with anticipation as he set a course for the closest swarm outpost. The real challenge would be making first contact without the Council finding out. Things went wrong the moment Scout's ship entered Earth's atmosphere. His cloaking system failed, 3 human fighter jets appeared on his sensors, and worse, a Council spy satellite was watching from high orbit. "Unknown aircraft, you have entered restricted airspace," a human voice crackled through his communication system. "Identify yourself immediately." Scout had planned for a quiet landing in a remote area. Instead, he was flying over what his computer identified as a military base in a region called Montana. The fighter jets moved with impressive precision, surrounding his ship in a triangle formation. On the ground below, Commander Jack Thompson watched the scene unfold through his binoculars. 20 years in the Air Force hadn't prepared him for this moment. An alien ship, shaped like a giant metallic beetle, hovering over his base. "Sir," his radio operator called, "the bogey is transmitting something. It's in English." "This is Ambassador Scout of the Swarm Alliance." The transmission came through. "I come in peace and request immediate sanctuary. Council forces will be here in approximately 10 minutes. They cannot find me here." Jack made a quick decision. Something in that alien voice sounded desperate, and if there were hostile forces coming, his base needed to be ready. "Guide the bogey to Hangar 7, he ordered. "Full security protocol. And get those emergency response teams ready. We might have company." Scout landed his ship inside the massive hangar. As the doors closed behind him, he saw humans in military uniforms surrounding his vessel, weapons raised. But they weren't firing. They were waiting, watching, ready but not hostile. The ship's outer shell opened like flower petals, and Scout emerged. Several soldiers gasped at his insect-like appearance, but they held their positions. Jack stepped forward, his hand on his pistol, but not drawing it. "I'm Commander Thompson," he said firmly. "You've got about 9 minutes to explain why I shouldn't have my men shoot you right now." Scout's antenna twitched as he activated his translator. "The Galactic Council will send ships to this sector. They cannot know I made contact with humans. Your species, you are unique. Special. You could change everything." Before Jack could respond, alarms blared throughout the base. Multiple objects entering atmosphere. A voice announced over the speakers. 3 ships of unknown design approaching. "Council patrol ships," Scout clicked nervously. "They followed my trail." Jack turned to his communications officer. "Get me eyes on those ships. Now." The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Jack watched in amazement as Scout connected to his ship through some kind of mental link, making it fold and compress until it was barely larger than a car. Base personnel quickly covered it with tarps and equipment, making it look like ordinary military hardware. "Your species," Scout said quickly. "You understand both individual action and group coordination. The Council thinks beings like me are primitive because we work as one. But you humans, you choose when to act alone and when to work together. We need allies like you." Jack was about to respond when the radio crackled again. "Sir, the alien ships are demanding to search the base. They claim they're chasing a fugitive." A smile crossed Jack's face, the kind of smile that came from 20 years of dealing with bureaucrats and politicians. "Tell them this is a classified United States military installation, and any unauthorized entry will be considered an act of war." He turned to Scout. "Can they detect you if you're not moving?" "No," Scout answered. "My species can enter a dormant state that hides our energy signature." "Good. Play dead then. Let me handle this." The next 30 minutes were a masterclass in human diplomatic obstruction. Jack had his teams file official protests, demand authentication, request verification codes, and insist on following proper channels. His fighters maintained aggressive patrol patterns around the base, while ground crews made a show of conducting routine exercises. Eventually, the Council ships gave up. They couldn't risk starting a war with an unknown species just to chase one swarm ship that their sensors couldn't even detect anymore. After they left, Scout emerged from his dormant state to find Jack grinning at him. "So," the commander said, "tell me more about this council and why exactly they're so afraid of species working together." Scout's antenna lifted in what humans would later learn was a smile. "It's a long story. But I think your people, you humans, might be exactly what the galaxy needs right now." Behind them, base personnel were already studying Scout's ship with intense curiosity, while others set up secure communications and surveillance networks. They moved with practiced efficiency, each person doing their job while smoothly coordinating with others. The Council had always laughed at the swarm's way of life. They never imagined that humans would prove them wrong about everything. 2 months after first contact, Hangar 7 had become the most secret laboratory on Earth. Commander Jack stood beside Scout, watching teams of scientists and worker engineers collaborate on their latest project. "Your biotechnology is incredible," said Dr. Peters, the lead human scientist, as she studied the living metal that made up Scout's ship. "It grows, heals, and adapts like a living thing, but it's stronger than our strongest alloys." The workers, who looked like large bees with extra sets of delicate manipulator arms, buzzed with pride. One of them, whom the humans had nicknamed Builder, demonstrated how they could mentally command the living metal to reshape itself. "But look at what your human engineers have done with it," Scout clicked excitedly. His antenna waved toward the prototype in the center of the hangar. It was a fighter jet, but unlike anything Earth had seen before. The human-designed frame was covered in swarm biometal. As they watched, test pilot Lisa Rogers climbed into the cockpit. The living metal responded to her touch, forming a perfect seal around her flight suit. "Neural link active," Lisa reported. It feels like the ship is part of me." Jack smiled. In just 2 months, humans had taken swarm technology and pushed it in directions the hive species had never considered. The workers were excellent at improving and perfecting existing designs, but humans excelled at imagining completely new possibilities. "Ready for Test Flight 7, Lisa announced. The hangar doors opened to reveal the Montana night sky. The hybrid fighter rose smoothly, its engines nearly silent thanks to swarm technology. Then Lisa did something that made the workers buzz with amazement. She began performing complex aerial maneuvers that should have been impossible for a ship of that size. "Remarkable," Scout clicked. "We never thought to use the biometal's flexibility for enhanced aerodynamics. Your pilot is letting the ship flow through the air like water." But it wasn't just military technology they were developing. In another section of the hangar, human medical researchers worked with worker healers, combining swarm organic repair techniques with human medical knowledge. They had already developed new treatments for several diseases that had stumped both species separately. "The Council was wrong about everything," Scout said quietly to Jack. "They thought our hive mind made us weak, unimaginative. But look what happens when we combine our strengths with human creativity." Jack nodded, watching Lisa land the prototype with perfect precision. "Your people perfect and refine, making everything work at its absolute best. My people dream up crazy new ideas and somehow make them work. Together, we're stronger than either of us alone," Scout finished. The success wasn't just in the lab. Over the past weeks, human diplomats had secretly met with swarm representatives. Both sides quickly recognized how much they could learn from each other. Humans were fascinated by the swarm's perfect cooperation and efficiency, while the swarm was amazed by humanity's ability to maintain individuality while working together. Latest communication from the Swarm Council, a worker reported, connecting to their shared network. "They've approved the alliance. Full technology sharing can begin." The news spread quickly through the hangar. Scientists hugged workers, engineers high-fived each other, and even the usually reserved Scout made a happy clicking sound. But their celebration was interrupted by an urgent message from the base's radar station. "Sir," the operator's voice was tense, We're detecting council ships at the edge of our solar system. A lot of them. They're not even trying to hide." Jack and Scout exchanged looks. They had known this moment would come. The council wouldn't stay ignorant forever. "How many?" Jack asked. "At least 30 ships, sir, and they're bigger than anything we've seen before." Scout's antenna drooped slightly. "They'll demand Earth reject any alliance with us. They'll threaten your world with destruction." But Jack was smiling again. That same confident smile he'd shown during their first meeting. "Let them come. They think we're just two weak species who can't stand alone." He gestured at the hybrid fighter, the medical breakthroughs, the perfectly coordinated teams of humans and swarm working together. "I think it's time we show them what happens when we stand together." Around them, human and swarm personnel were already moving with practiced efficiency, preparing for the coming confrontation. Each group did what they did best: humans innovating, swarm coordinating, all of them working as one without losing what made them unique. The council's laughter was about to die in their throats. The United Nations emergency session fell silent as the massive hologram appeared above the assembly. The council leader's blue-skinned face looked down at the gathered human representatives with cold amusement. "People of Earth," his voice boomed through the chamber, "you have been deceived. The Swarm Alliance is a primitive collective, barely more than insects. By harboring their ships and accepting their technology, you risked the safety of this entire sector." Scout stood beside Jack and the UN Secretary General, his antenna twitching with familiar anger. Same old insults, same old lies. "The Council gives Earth 2 standard days to reject all contact with the swarm," the Council leader continued. "Remove their ships from your space. Hand over any technology they have given you. Do this, and we will welcome humanity into the civilized galaxy." The Secretary General stepped forward. She was an older woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen many diplomatic battles. "And if we refuse?" The hologram smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Then we will be forced to cleanse this sector. For the greater good of the galaxy, of course." Murmurs filled the chamber, but they weren't sounds of fear. They were angry whispers, determined discussions. The council leader had made a crucial mistake. He had threatened Earth. "Before we respond," the Secretary General said calmly, "I believe we have prepared a small presentation. Commander Thompson, if you would." Jack nodded and pressed a button. New holograms appeared, showing scenes from across Earth. Hybrid ships performing impossible maneuvers. Medical centers where swarm healing technology had cured thousands. Farms where worker bioengineering had doubled crop yields. In 2 months of cooperation, Jack announced, "The Swarm Alliance has helped us advance our technology by decades. But more importantly, they've shown us something the Council seems to have forgotten." The images changed to show humans and swarm species working together, scientists sharing ideas, engineers building new machines, doctors saving lives. "Strength doesn't come from forcing everyone to be the same," Jack continued. "It comes from celebrating our differences and working together." The council leader's face darkened. "These insects have corrupted your thinking." "They..." "No," the Secretary General cut him off. "They opened our eyes. And now we're opening the eyes of others." New holograms appeared. Other alien species watching the broadcast. Races that had been neutral in the Council's politics. They saw the results of human swarm cooperation. They saw the Council's threats against a peaceful alliance. "You call the swarm primitive because they work as one." Scout clicked, his translator carrying his words to all listening species. "You mock humans because they are young. But together, we have achieved more in 2 months than the Council has in years of enforcing their civilization." The Council leader's hologram grew larger, more threatening. "This is your final warning. Reject the swarm, or face extinction." The Secretary General stood straight, her voice firm. "Humanity has faced extinction before. We've faced ice ages, plagues, and our own destructive nature. Every time, we survived by working together, by combining our strengths." She smiled. The swarm taught us we're not alone in understanding this truth. Then you have made your choice, the council leader snarled. Our cleansing fleet will arrive in 3 days. We will show the galaxy what happens to those who reject proper civilization. The hologram vanished. Immediately, the chamber burst into activity. Military commanders contacted their forces. Scientists rushed to complete projects. Diplomats reached out to other species who had watched the exchange. He still doesn't understand, Scout clicked to Jack. He thinks he's proving the Council's strength, but he's showing everyone their weakness. Jack nodded. Fear. They're afraid of anything different, anything they can't control. That's why they hate the swarm's unity and our chaos equally. He turned to Scout. Is everything ready? Scout's antenna lifted in his species' version of a smile. The combined fleet is in position. The workers have completed the upgrades, and thanks to your broadcasting, half the galaxy just watched the Council threaten to destroy a peaceful world. Then let them come, the Secretary General said, joining them. It's time to show the galaxy what real civilization looks like. Around them, humans and swarm members moved with shared purpose. The Council thought they were coming to crush 2 weak species. Instead, they were about to face something unprecedented, the perfect fusion of individual brilliance and collective strength. The Council's laughter was about to turn into screams. The Council's cleansing fleet emerged from hyperspace exactly where Jack and Scout expected them to appear. 100 massive warships, arranged in the Council's trademark perfect grid formation. They never changed their tactics. That was their weakness. Time to show them something new, Jack said from the bridge of the flagship Unity. The ship was a marvel of human and swarm engineering, its living metal hull pulsing with energy. Scout stood beside him, connected to the swarm network. Through their shared consciousness, he could feel every worker and runner in their combined fleet. But unlike before, they weren't just moving as one. Each ship now had human crews adding their creativity to the swarm's coordination. Council fleet is broadcasting, the communications officer reported. They're ordering us to surrender. Let's answer them properly, Jack grinned. Execute Operation Beehive. The human swarm fleet suddenly burst into action. Worker ships, which the Council had always mocked as simple drones, began rapidly constructing massive honeycomb-like structures in space. Each hexagonal cell was large enough to hide a ship. What is this foolishness? The Council leader's voice boomed through the comms. Your primitive hive building won't save you. All ships, open fire. The Council fleet fired their main weapons. Massive energy beams shot toward Earth's defenders. But instead of hitting ships, they struck the honeycomb structures. The living metal didn't just absorb the attacks, it redirected them through the connected cells. Now, Jack commanded. Human pilots, flying hybrid fighters enhanced with swarm biotechnology, shot out of the honeycomb cells. They moved in ways the Council had never seen before, their ships literally morphing mid-flight to adapt to their maneuvers. The rigid Council formation broke apart trying to track them. Impossible, the Council leader shouted. No ship can move like that. That's because you never imagined what would happen when you combine human intuition with swarm adaptation, Scout clicked back. The battle unfolded like a deadly dance. When Council ships tried to regroup, they found the honeycomb structures had moved, cutting off their formations. When they tried to target the human fighters, the workers would instantly create new shields exactly where needed. On the Unity's bridge, Jack watched the tactical display with pride. Each human pilot was fighting their own way, completely unpredictable. But thanks to the swarm network, they were all perfectly coordinated. It was chaos and order working as one. Their flagship is attempting to break through to Earth orbit, Scout reported. Perfect, Jack smiled. Spring the trap. As the Council flagship pushed forward, something unprecedented happened. The honeycomb structures around it suddenly came alive. They weren't just barriers. They were thousands of connected runner ships, disguised as simple walls. They transformed and swarmed the Council vessel from all directions. The council leader's voice had lost its mockery now. "What are you?" "We are what happens when you stop laughing and start learning," Jack replied. "When you realize different doesn't mean primitive. When you understand that true strength comes from working together, not forcing everyone to be the same." The battle lasted less than an hour. The council fleet, for all its superior numbers, couldn't adapt to the combined human swarm tactics. Their rigid battle doctrine fell apart against opponents who could be both chaotic and coordinated at the same time. When the council flagship finally surrendered, half the galaxy was watching through the broadcast channels Earth had kept open. They saw how the supposedly primitive swarm and the supposedly primitive humans had defeated the council's greatest fleet. "Signal from the other council ships," the comms officer reported. "They're standing down." Scout's antenna trembled with emotion. "We did it. We actually did it. We did it together," Jack corrected him. He turned to the tactical display, where council ships were powering down their weapons. The honeycomb structures were pulling back, transforming into their true forms, a beautiful combination of ships working as one. The council's laughter had finally stopped. In its place was a stunned silence as they realized their greatest mistake. They had spent so long mocking others for being different, they never saw the strength that difference could bring. The Battle of Unity, as it would be known, lasted less than a day. But its impact would reshape the galaxy forever. 1 year after the Battle of Unity, the galactic landscape had changed completely. The Grand Hall of the newly formed Alliance Council looked very different from the old council chamber. Instead of raised platforms designed to make some species look down on others, the hall was arranged in a circular pattern, inspired by both human roundtable discussions and swarm hive circles. Scout stood at the speaker's position, but this time there was no mockery in the eyes watching him. Beside him, Jack wore the formal uniform of the combined fleet, its design incorporating both human military tradition and swarm biotech elements. The Unity Academy accepts its first 1,000 students next month, Scout announced to the gathered representatives. Young minds from 50 different species, all coming together to learn from each other's strengths. The announcement was met with enthusiastic approval. The Academy had been Jack and Scout's idea, a place where different species could learn to combine their unique abilities instead of competing with each other. Imagine, Jack added, a galaxy where we don't just tolerate our differences, but actively seek them out, where every new way of thinking is seen as an opportunity, not a threat. In the years since the battle, the changes had been remarkable. The worker engineers had learned to think more creatively from their human partners, while human scientists had gained new appreciation for the power of perfect cooperation. Together, they had solved problems neither species could handle alone. The former council leader, now serving as a junior representative, watched from his new position. The battle had cost him his power, but he had gained something more valuable: understanding. He had seen firsthand how wrong he had been about primitive species. The medical division reports another breakthrough, a worker announced, her wings humming with excitement. Human doctors and our healers have developed a cure for the crystal plague that has troubled the rock people for generations. More cheers filled the hall. It was just the latest example of what different species could achieve together. The rock people had always been neutral in council politics, but now they were eager allies in the new alliance. But our greatest achievement, Scout clicked, his antenna high with pride, is not in our technology or our victories. It's in the way we now look at each other. The huge view screen behind him showed images from across the galaxy. Human children playing with runner younglings in zero-gravity parks. Worker engineers teaching their construction techniques to eager students from dozens of worlds. Artists from different species collaborating to create entirely new forms of expression. The old council thought strength came from making everyone the same, Jack said. They laughed at anything different, anything they didn't understand. But look at us now. The images shifted to show the combined fleet. Ships of all designs and origins flew together in formations that were both precise and creative. Swarm biotech merged perfectly with human innovation, creating vessels that could adapt and think in ways neither species had imagined before. We stand here today not as separate species, not as rulers and ruled, but as partners, Scout declared. Each of us bringing our own strengths, our own ways of thinking, our own unique gifts to share. The hall erupted in approval. Representatives from across the galaxy, some humanoid, some insectoid, some completely alien, all celebrating together. The old hatred and fear were being replaced by curiosity and cooperation. Jack smiled at his friend Scout. Remember when they used to laugh at you in this hall? Scout's antenna twitched in amusement. Now they laugh with us, not at us. And the galaxy is better for it. As the celebration continued, a young human girl and a runner child gave a joint presentation about their experience in the Academy's pilot program. They moved in perfect sync while maintaining their individual styles, a living example of what the Alliance stood for. The old council had laughed at the swarm for thinking like insects. They had dismissed humans as primitive newcomers. They never imagined that together, these primitive species would create something greater than the council had ever dreamed possible. The laughter had stopped, replaced by hope. And in that hope lay the future of a galaxy where differences were not just accepted, but celebrated, where strength came not from enforcing sameness, but from embracing what made each species unique. The new age had begun.